Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Draft Capital here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. I am Stephen Gillespie, and joining me is my partner in crime, the man of Off the Ball Network. That is Chris LeBron. Chris, what's up?
What's going on, brother? How's everything, man? It's another day, another dollar. Excited to chop it up and with our special guest today.
Yeah, man, everything is there with me. And likewise, I am super excited for today's show because we have an incredible guest on. He is a co-host of Tag the Roll. He's also a writer for Premium Hoops and Indy Cornrows. That being, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Schindler. Mark, how you doing today, brother?
I'm good, guys. I appreciate you having me on. I'm psyched to get into it, man. So it's been weird with weather lately. I try not to bring up the weather, but seriously, it's been like driving me crazy. I live in Ohio, just off the lake, like right outside Cleveland. It was 20 yesterday, and it's 60 today. Like dude, it's been all over.
I
just
I
want
live in New
consistency.
York, so we get all seasons, in like one day too.
Yeah.
So I know that feeling of not knowing how to dress. And like it
Yeah.
being 30 degrees, and then it's gonna be 60, and it's like, okay, like, can we just pick one type of weather and like so I can
Exactly,
get
man.
adjusted to it? Like, it gets crazy over here too.
Me, I'm stationed in Southeast Georgia, so I'm in a very frigid, like 60-degree
Yeah.
weather right now. It's rough. I almost have to wear sweatpants when I go out at night now. It's that type of weather right now for me. And shout out real quick to our buddy Sage Alvarez. He writes in and says, all I see are goats. And he also says that winter doesn't exist here in Palm Springs, California. Sage, I'm right there with you, dude. Over here in Georgia, it's pretty right now. But we're not here just to shoot the weather right now. We're here because we're going to be tagging the draft, is what I'm calling this episode. Mark, is that an all right title? Can I kind of play
cool
off you? All right, man. So we're going to be tagging the draft here with Mark Schindler, and we're going to get into a really cool list of players. Some of these guys we've already talked about, but a couple of them are brand new for the listeners here on Draft Capital. Before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody, Chris, that we are sponsored by Built Bar now at the Off the Ball Network. And unlike all the other bars that are out there that taste either like old Play-Doh or a piece of cardboard, when you eat a Built Bar, you will think that you are cheating on your diet with a delicious chocolate dessert. If your kids find out how good these things are, you're going to have to buy more because they're going to be begging for them. We have great flavors like cookies and cream, double chocolate, strawberry, peanut butter brownie, much more. They also have a mystery flavor that if you guess correctly, you can win a prize. Just go over to built.com, enter in promo code off the ball. That'll let them know that we sent you. And because we're such good friends with the people over at Built Bar, they'll hook you up with a 10% discount. Chris, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Hell of a deal, man. Hell of a deal. Like I said, I'm very happy that we're partnering with Built Bar. A lot of good things. They're very good. Their products are good, and just very happy to be a part of the Built Bar family.
Absolutely, man. Likewise. Built Bar is an amazing product. Go and save you some money at built.com with promo code off the ball. All right, so now Mark, we're here to pick your brain, brother, because you have a lot of content going on. We see you writing about college. We see you writing about the pros. I love the work that you do. You're putting out, snippets of film. I think right now as we speak, I think I see you working on some clips that you've been putting out there. But we're going to be talking about a list of players that are catching your eye. Chris, we've talked about this first gentleman, Jalen Duren out of Memphis. We really like his game. Mark, what has stuck out to you so far about Jalen Duren?
Yeah, he's been tough for me to evaluate in some ways because I don't have priors on a lot of guys, but I did watch like a decent amount of Montverde and IMG last year. So I got to watch Jalen Duren play quite a bit. And I was excited about him immediately, especially when he reclassed. He's been really impressive coming in. I mean, he's averaging 5 blocks a game. Part of that is he had like a monster block game. I got a little, I threw out some shade this morning, not to him, but to the Memphis stat keeper. They gave him 2 blocks that were not even remotely close to him. But he's just been so good, man. Like, I think a lot of times people talk about like somebody just being so physically imposing, and that's kind of who Jalen is. The weird part with it is like, I think it's kind of what we saw in some ways with Evan Mobley his senior year of high school in terms of like he just knows that he's so good, and not in a cocky way. Like he's just that good on the basketball court that I think he kind of floats sometimes. Like not that he's doing anything wrong. Like I watched the St. Louis game this morning that he played last night, and he was fantastic defensively. He was in the right place. blew up quite a few plays at the rim, was good on the perimeter, played multiple coverages well. But also like he'll just have these moments where he goes from looking like a guy who's going to be an NBA player to a guy who looks like this guy should be drafted in the top 5. I don't know where I would have him right now, but it's like those plays that are like, okay, that's incredibly tantalizing, but also like, dude, I want to see that all the time. And that's kind of been the thing with him. There are games where he like absolutely just, flies off the page and looks like that the entire game. And then there are other games where, yeah, this dude's 6'9", 6'10" with a massive wingspan, but you don't notice him at times because he's just kind of doing his job. But at the same time, like, all right, if you're drafting this guy top 5, he needs to be like popping every single time. And again, that's not meant to diminish him, but it's just more like, okay, when you're looking at somebody drafting that high, like you got to be a little bit extra critical. I've kind of liked how Penny Hardaway has used him. Like that team is extremely talented. Memphis is just a really fun team to watch right now. But I want to see him get used more as like a DHO operator and, trying to do a little bit more with the ball in his hands. Because especially when last year at Montverde, he showed a little bit as a passer that is something that you want to see moving to the next level for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Chris, we were talking about that playmaking ability from his first couple games, from Tennessee Tech. He played against North Carolina Central since the last time we discussed him, another double-double there, almost a handful of blocks, no really assists, but you still see him as a part of that offense. And the guy that, much like Mark is just pointing out, DHO, he can have offense run through him a lot. And some of these comps that we've been seeing, Bam Adebayo is one that's kind of been recycled a lot lately. Chris, what do you think about Mark's assessment? That's pretty much right on with what we were saying last week, right?
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, he's tough to evaluate because, he is an athletic specimen, but you do want to see more. But then it's like, we got to put it like he is super young too. So like he's still trying to figure out, he's still 17 years old. So it's like,
which is crazy to think about watching him play in these games.
Which is insane. Like he's 17 years old. He's still a baby. Like,
and Amani on the same team. Like they're just two 17-year-old kids just tearing it up.
I'm almost older than them combined, it's really crazy, but he has all the tools. I mean, I wanted to ask you, Mark, do you see any, outside, shooting potential with him? Because I think that's the next step for him is developing, more of an outside shot. And if he gets that, I mean, the sky's the limit for him.
I'm curious on what that could look like for him. That's not something he's really flashed at all, especially like not in college yet, but that wasn't really anything he tried in high school either. I do think the touch is really good from him. Like he's a solid free throw shooter. He's only shooting 67%, but again, small sample size. Like I don't know if he's going to be a 3-point shooter, but obviously you want to see him, take some mid-range jumpers. Like, let's see what it looks like. Just take it because this is your opportunity right now. Like this Memphis, like we mentioned, this Memphis team's awesome. Like I think you can get away with having him, take a couple of in rhythm 16 to 18 footers. Obviously that's, I think sometimes the way we talk about the game, people are like, oh, you don't want to see that. But also like, that's the first step for this guy taking that next step into what he can do more offensively. Like same thing with looking at a guy like Bam Adebayo. Like I don't like the Bam to Jalen comp because I think they're very different.
I agree.
But with looking at Jalen, like it's the same thing with Bam. Like, Bam is not going to be a 3-point shooter yet, but he's gone from being mostly push shots and floaters and lobs to, now he's really honed in and he's taking 4 or 5 mid-rangers a game at a pretty good clip. And maybe that becomes shooting the 3, in a year or two. So that's what I want to see from Jalen. Like, I think I've actually been even more impressed with Amani than I have been of Jalen so far. But I think that's the next thing that you really want to see with this Memphis team and him getting some more opportunities with that.
Yeah, and that's fair. One thing I wanted to ask you in particular about Duren here, Mark, was that we talk about how much of an uphill battle he basically has to climb, basically because of the position that he plays. I mean, it's the question is do you draft a center this high? They're supposedly one of the most replaceable positions in the NBA, but what do we see in the NBA this last season? We saw Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic almost go, neck and neck for MVP. So I feel like the big man position is a little bit stepping back into the light a little bit more with guys like Bam Adebayo. What do we see now as a rookie with Evan Mobley? Not comparing Duren's game to Mobley, but still, a skilled big, right? Similar to, Bam in a sense is that Duren isn't really flashing any of the things now in college that what we would have expected Bam to do as a pro, right? Like in Kentucky, Bam kind of played differently than he did as a pro. And we look at a system like Kentucky and we say, well, sometimes these college systems hold a player back from what they ultimately could end up being. Do you think that Memphis could be a similar situation for him, Mark?
Oh, that's a good question. I do think like, okay, let's say if he goes somewhere else, I can't like, okay, let's say he goes to Minnesota or something, just like off the top of my head. Um, like maybe he's more featured, and it's different. Like, cause I think in some ways, like playing next to Amani, you're automatically taking away a lot of like, okay, you're not going to be the primary guy because that's his job. Like that's what he's here to do. I do think like in some ways it might be good because I mean, personally, I didn't really see him as being that kind of guy. But also, I just like the idea of, like, I mean, a guy who we'll talk about later, Patrick Baldwin. Like, I like the idea of somebody going somewhere that doesn't have a primary and just seeing, can you do it? Can you take more reps? But in some ways, I think it will be good for Jaylen and just, like maybe there will be some things that he can do that he doesn't get to flash as much. But I think the ultimate role for him is like becoming a guy who ultimately is like a playmaking hub in some ways. You can just be a good screener and find scoring opportunities out of that, be opportunistic. And, obviously like we mentioned with the jumper, find more from that too. And I do think he's getting put in the positions to do that. It's just going to be getting more of it. Like he had some weird minutes against St. Louis. Like he got pulled like 3 minutes in and then came back a minute later and then got pulled again 2 minutes later. It's been some odd sub patterns that I'll have to dig up some of post-game interviews with Penny to get more info on that. But I do think we're going to see more of that because he's still acclimating.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Chris, it's what, 3 games into the very young freshman campaign for the guy. So, I mean, far from a finished product. And yet here we are kind of prognosticating ultimately what kind of player he's going to be as a pro. But I mean, that's what scouts are getting paid to do right now. Their jobs are to look at this ball of clay and see what it can look like when it's hardened and then when it's all finished and painted and pretty and ready to be purchased, right? So we look at Jalen Duren now and we're so enamored by him. Chris, where are you kind of feeling at his draft stock right now?
I mean, I see it still in that top 5 range. If we're going to talk about right now, like I said, it's obviously it's super early in the process, obviously, but this is a part of the scouting process, right? You're supposed to, evaluate, each, part of the season. And, right now, if you're just going off his raw ability, it's top 5. It might be top 3 alone. So it's going to be intriguing to see how Penny uses him going forward. Obviously with Amani, Amani is going to be the focal point of that offense. So just to, so it's going to be interesting to see how Jalen, gets a cuss because he's supposed to be in high school still. So like, so, we have to put that in perspective too, that, he, like we mentioned before, he's super young. So there's going to be an adjustment period, right? He's going to college, college atmosphere and all that. So, I'm very excited to see him, how he progresses, because I expect him to get better and better and better throughout the year, so I'm very excited about him going forward.
Yeah. And people will mention kind of that level of competition. Chris, I've said it before. I'll say it again, that like you want him to look like he's playing against lower competition right now if he is. And I think that he's doing just that. So, Mark, we're going to transition now from Jalen Duren to Caleb Houstan. Now, this is a guy that people had a little bit wider range on coming into the season. And from everything that I'm reading and hearing right now, there's a lot of people that are flirting with him at that top 5 level too. And it's like there's 12 guys that are supposedly all going to get drafted top 5 right now. And Caleb Houstan is supposed to be one of these 12, right? You wanted to discuss this guy, freshman playing for Michigan this season, has had a couple really good games. And then his latest performance, left a little bit to be desired. But ultimately, I think that he's still playing at a level to where people are still going to be really high on him as a pro. What are you thinking right now about Caleb?
I was really high on Caleb coming into the year, especially when seeing him in FIBA over the summer in the U19 playing for Canada. That was like the first time where he really got to kind of flex his muscles and show what he can do, because he played on the same team as Jalen Duren in at Montverde, and was a little bit less of a primary guy just because they had so many dudes who were capable there. he hasn't really gotten those kind of looks here, but again, like he showed that at U19, especially with the shooting potential too, and what he can do as a movement shooter. Like he's shown that already. Like he's being used as the back screener a lot out of Spain pick and roll.
Love that set with him
I
too.
absolutely loved it. Like Michigan's offense is just amazing. Juwan Howard is probably the best coach in college basketball as far as I'm concerned. So it's been glorious to watch. I know we had the rough shooting game against Seton Hall last night, but I still liked the process for the most part. He's had some really good finishes around the basket. I do want to see him get more opportunities in the pick and roll because that's been less of a thing to start the year. It's been a lot more of just getting buckets in transition off spot-ups, which I get it. They already have a pretty established group with Hunter Dickinson there and some upperclassmen that are also on the wing. But like he's showing the shooting. He really just hasn't taken very easy shots. Like yes, he's taking corner threes, but he's doing stuff coming off screens, off pin downs. Like it's looked good. And the defense has been really fantastic too from him, especially rotating us to the low man. And he's had some really nice passes as well. Like I've been encouraged by that. I think that was something that you saw, just last year and again at FIBA, but his handle looks a little bit tighter, not like anything super noticeable. Like I think that is the real differentiator for what he can be moving forward. But just seeing more reps, as that goes on. But even just looking at last night, there were like 3 or 4 passes within the first 10 minutes that I thought, if it's not blown, it's an assist because he was making those kind of reads and looked that good. So box score wise, doesn't look phenomenally shooting below 40%, but I do think he's had a really good start.
Yeah, no doubt. And Chris, these are one of these guys that we're both high on, right? We both love Caleb Houstan. He might have the prettiest shot in all of college basketball right now. Mm-hmm. But one thing I think is kind of flying underneath the radar, and Mark, you touched on this a little bit in your analysis, is that because you want to see more out of the pick and roll set is because we're seeing him display some real playmaking ability, in very small samples, Chris. I mean, we've seen him in a pick and roll situation throw some kind of, it's not like a straightforward pass or an entry pass to a set post player, right? Like this is a pick and roll set. Is a very dynamic play, especially at the collegiate level as a freshman. And he's throwing whip passes out of it, to either the cutting big man or, cross court to an open teammate. And it's that type of stuff that at this 6'8" frame, a little over 200 pounds, I'm seeing a lot of Klay Thompson comparisons. I don't know if he's going to be quite that level of guy. It's fun to see a guy at his size who can shoot and be like, oh, okay, like he can easily just be one of the greatest shooters of all time, right? But Chris, Mark just got done breaking down the Spain pick and roll, the way Michigan is using him. How are you feeling about, will that affect ultimately where he is drafted, do you think? Or do you think teams will look at that and be like, oh, man, this guy's going to be plug and play for our system?
Yeah, I mean, Mark mentioned like the passing ability and all that. And watching the game versus Seton Hall, if you just look on Twitter, people would box score, like they killed him. Like, oh, he's awful. Everyone said this guy was going to be the next big star, blah, blah, blah. And you watch the game and you're like, he didn't take a lot of bad shots. Yeah, he didn't shoot the ball well, but like I watched, I'm like, it's not like it just didn't go down. It's just that simple. It just didn't go down. So it wasn't a case of, oh, he's taking these awful shots off balance, blah, blah, blah. It just didn't go down all that. But what I did say was the playmaking. I really like some of the playmaking. And the defense was solid. I mean, I saw people saying, oh, he's off that one possession he had. I think it was on the corner 3 where he didn't close out. And people just picked him apart on one play. Right. And that's what we're going to see a lot with a lot of these guys is people just nitpicking. And that's what I can't stand is the nitpicking. And like Mark, you said, like, you look at the stats and it's like, okay, it's not impressive, but you actually watch it. You're like, he's actually playing solid ball. Like, and last game obviously didn't shoot well, but wasn't a lot of bad shots. So I think, like I said, it's still like we're still early in the season. He's figuring out stuff. I really like him. Like I said, I like his shot. I think he could be he's what you want in a wing and all that. So I think he's. People are down on him, draft Twitter, but I think he's going to improve. He's going to keep getting better and better. And there's a lot to like about the playmaking to me is really good. So, bad night yesterday, but he's going to bounce back and he'll be all right. And like I said, the shots weren't the issue. Like it just didn't go down. It happens. People need to figure it happens, right? It didn't. The shot selection was an issue. Just shots didn't go down. He'll be all right. He's going to be all right.
Yeah, and Mark, I want to pass that same question to you. You know, when scouts are looking at him, and he's not really essentially being featured as like the star attraction, if you will, in Michigan, but he is playing a very important role on a team that has a lot to play for this season, right? If you're a scout for an NBA team, right, and you're looking at a guy like Caleb Houstan, and you have, let's say, like the anywhere from like the 5 to 8 pick, are you entertaining a guy who can shoot, who can defend, and flashes a little bit of playmaking ability, or are you looking for a little bit more of a higher upside guy?
I mean, I still would put him as a high upside guy because I think, like, again, with FIBA, that was just like pretty eye opening to what he could do. Um, I think a lot of it's just, I mean, again, you want to see more. Part of it's been helpful because Michigan has played a pretty tough schedule early. Like Buffalo's a really good team. They'll
Yeah.
probably be the
Mm-hmm.
best team in the MAC this year. I mean, Seton Hall's obviously very good. Actually, I mean, he completely outplayed Kadari Richmond yesterday.
Oh man.
He just a very rough game for Kadari,
Yeah,
but
Kadari.
If there's
yeah.
a prospect right now that I have heard a lot about, and I'm looking at film, and I'm just like, I hope he turns
I
it
think
around.
there's good
I'll leave it at
stuff
that.
on him, but yeah, yesterday was not one of those
Yeah, he
games for him.
struggled to say the
Um,
least.
But with Caleb, like I don't know, I just see it, especially with the level of shooter he is, and I think as teams start to adapt to that, like he's already shown that, like he's really good at. I mean, he's drawing hard closeouts already and finding ways to attack from there. Um, I think, I mean, that's the real avenue for him in the NBA, and in some ways that might be even better in the NBA in terms of what it does for playmaking and how things are spaced out compared to what it looks like in college. Like I do think, again, it's just good that we're seeing the flashes already. And I think you can just picture, okay, if we get him in here and we know, okay, you can play a role for us right away, but also we think that there's something more with you. If you develop your handle, if you find better ways to finish through contact, like I see it with him. I just think that, again, it's early, so it's hard to have like I don't have like a top 10 right now. I have like, my list of guys who I'm interested in, but I mean, he's somebody who I'd be comfortable with there for sure.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like you, Mark. I don't really have I have a few guys like you that like you just said, right, that I'm high on, but I don't have like a particular order yet because I like to at least wait until I've seen the majority of everybody play, right? And that might not
Mhm.
happen for another, 2-3 weeks before I feel confident enough to be like, okay, yeah, Caleb Houstan, you're sixth best out of everybody else in the nation right now,
Yeah.
right? But I'm like you. I still think that there's a lot of upside because you're seeing him play in a system right now that is for the betterment of the team, right? It's not to essentially highlight Caleb Houstan as a prospect where he could probably have gone to a smaller school and gotten that. So him going to be on the national stage, probably going to be playing late into the year, hopefully if everything goes Michigan's way. And he's going to have a prominent role in all of that. And, his size, shooting ability, passing, defense, could play maybe 2-3 positions out there on the court, as a rookie, and possibly could grow as a pro as that goes along. I'm right there with you, Chris. I know that you're a lot of the same way. We both love Caleb Houstan, but this next player, Mark. I'm really interested to get your insight on him because I feel like I'm a little bit lower on the consensus on Patrick Baldwin Jr. And it's not because I just don't like his game or anything like that. It's I'm being told from a lot of people that he is this highly rated of a prospect. And if you go and look at the box score, you'll be like, what are you talking about, Steven? Like he's doing this. But I was telling Chris last week, Mark, and I really need your help on maybe turning my opinion around, or you can even affirm me if you like. But I've seen moments in the game to where I'm just like, I wish that he would kind of pick up his intensity a little bit, if that makes sense. Like I wish that he was more assertive on the court, especially playing at a smaller school where he's got such a high usage level, if that makes sense. So, Mark, I'll give this to you. What's your early assessment of Patrick Baldwin Jr.?
Yeah, I think that's I get where you're coming from. It's tough with him because he, especially like if you look at him defensively, um he kind of is to me like Evan Mobley a lot, and like he's not a super assertive guy in how he looks when he's playing. Like he is a very good player, but like I mean Evan Mobley will swat the shit out of your shot without making any, like he could do it without smiling. And I think to some ways people were like really unfair about that with him. I'm not saying that's you, but just in general, like I think that was something that I really tried to combat last year because that frustrated me. But I
Mhm.
think Pat's kind of the same way. Like especially on defense, he's somebody like as he grows, I want to see him be a little bit better using his strength and his body. But right now he's more of like he's really good at positioning and being in the right place. Um, and just using his length to bother people. Like I think you could say like you want to see him get into people more a little bit, but also it's just not really his role right now, and especially what he's doing more as a forward. Offensively though, I've been kind of blown away. It's been awesome. Like this is what I was hoping for in some ways, and why I was excited for him to come here and play at UW. And I'm excited as hell for tomorrow when they play Florida, because that's going to be their best game of the season probably in terms of who he's playing against talent wise. I mean, he is in a lot of ways, like, yeah, his usage is high, but he's also not just being asked to run everything on the ball, which I like, because I think that would have been a mistake. Like, he's not that kind of player. But in terms of similarly to Caleb Houstan, like I think they're two guys who are compared a lot in this draft, actually. But like, I think Patrick Baldwin's going to be a top 10 shooter in the NBA by like the end of his rookie deal. Honestly, like he's that level of shooter for his size, coming off motion. Like he's the truth for me, man. Like I think he's going to be a top 5 pick. I think he should be a top 5 pick. I would take him with a top 5 pick right now. I know I just said I wouldn't do that with like most people. Like I want to be careful, but with what I've seen from him, like I think it's there. Similarly to Caleb, he has those same passing chops. It's been, a little bit of an adventure for him so far in terms of seeing everything on court and taking some of these reps, because he did do some of this in high school. Like he played public school, so it's, hard to decipher that. Yeah. But when he played AAU and EYBL, he was like the 4th guy in every single one of those teams. So he's always been capable of like doing more and showing flashes, but it's never really been asked of him because there were always guys with bigger priorities as on-ball creators when he was there. So I think I've been pretty impressed so far. Like he's shooting 25% from 3. I don't care. He's absolutely gunning it, and they're going to fall. Like his confidence has been really great. He's getting to the line a ton, which I have loved. I'm interested to see again how that holds up tomorrow. But I've just been really impressed so far. The defense hasn't been as amazing. Part of that is the usage ramp up, I'd imagine, but also just like keeping in mind, like, okay, this isn't the usage he's going to have in the NBA. Like I would be surprised if he's a 29% usage guy. But I think the reason why you want to see him go here is, okay, if he's playing at Duke next to Paolo, then he's taking like probably less than 10 shots a game. And I'm sure he would be selling out defensively, looking really good. But at the same time, okay, is there a chance that he could be a 23 or 24% usage guy in the NBA? Can he be your second or third guy who is attacking second side and doing more from that? And I think with the level of shooting he has and some of the touch on and vision he has as a passer, I do think that we're seeing some of that at UW. And I don't have any like definitive takes on what that means for him moving forward, but I am pretty encouraged so far.
I love your assessment of Patrick Baldwin Jr. And I could have prefaced my stance on him a little bit better. Chris, you remember I said that he's a fine player. He's very fluid. I love his high release. I think offensively, when he is taking shots, it looks good. But Mark, what I was referring to wasn't even so much on the defensive end, but it's even on the offensive end. I found, like he was kind of being a little passive when plays. Like I remember just the first game, his dad actually had to shove him in motion at one point during live action play. And that was just the one area that I was pointing to where I thought that, a little bit more aggression, but absolutely. I mean, Chris, we fall in love with the high release point, the shot at his size. It's beautiful. Mark already touched on the playmaking. Love that aspect. I think his ability just to bring the ball up, it's already dangerous at a collegiate level with the size that he is. Even at the next level, we got a few guys at this 4-man spot that are kind of fitting this modernized 4, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. might be able to do that same thing at that next level. Chris, Mark's in love with PBJ. How you feeling about him, brother?
I mean, I've been following him from me being a Duke fan. He was he was going to go to Duke, and I'm actually happy he didn't go to Duke. And that sounds weird because you want everyone to go to Duke, right? I'm a fan, you want everyone to go to school, but I love this game so much. I thought that if he were to go with AJ Griffin and Paolo, that he kind of get lost. It kind of like when Cam Reddish, because if Cam Reddish had gone to a different school, I think he may have been a top 5 pick, right? Because he has that talent, and I think he may have been lost in the shuffle, maybe, But I was kind of happy that he wound up going to UW, and because we're going to be able to see more of him, and he's just so much fun to watch. He's
He
so
really is.
smooth. That shot is smooth. Everything is so smooth about his offensive game that I think it's going to translate to the league, effortlessly. I think he's going to go right into the league and just be like an instant bucket getter once he gets in. I think he's a top 5 pick. Also, we're going to hear about a lot. Oh, this guy's a top 5 pick. I think he's definitely going to be a top 5 pick. We're going to see a lot of him. Big game. We mentioned the Florida game coming up. That's a big test for him because he's not going to have a lot of games where he's playing against primetime competition. So that's going to be the biggest thing with him as well. He's doing it against low level competition. He's going to have a big test there going against Florida. So, but his game is so smooth. That shot is smooth. He's be able to come off the screens. I just love everything about his game from the outside. So I'm happy he's the guy at UW, and we're going to be able to see him, what he can do as the guy. So he's a lot of fun to watch. I know, Mark, I grin the minute you said Patrick Baldwin, because like I said, been watching it for a while, and it, just so smooth. I know we talked about that look he doesn't have. It's like Tracy McGrady, like not to say he's Tracy, but Tracy McGrady had that, like, you think he doesn't care, and then he drops 40 on your head, and you're like, oh, okay, he's just not going to show you, like, he doesn't have that, those facial, but he's going to drop 40 on your head. I think we can see with Patrick Baldwin down the line, so I'm very excited to see, this game against Florida. That's going to be a big test for him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so Chris, we talked about 3 guys that we've already had discussion points on our show about, that being Jalen Duren, Caleb Houstan, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. And if you're listening to us on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio, thank you so much for tuning in. We're here with Mark Schindler of Tag the Roll, Indy Cornrows, and also Premium Hoops. So, Mark, you brought up 3 guys that we've already discussed before. This is going to be my favorite part of the show because we haven't talked about any of these guys. And I think that there's a lot of merit to having discussion about them. We'll lead off first with the preseason first-team All-American out of Indiana, that being Trayce Jackson-Davis. He's kind of a polarizing player, Mark. When I looked around and see where people had him listed, preseason, where he was going to get drafted, the only place that I saw his name listed out of a lot of places that I looked was on Sporting News, and he was 59th, so almost Mr. Irrelevant for Sporting News. Everywhere else does not have him listed. But obviously 6'9", 245. He was also 64th on NBA Draft Room, so they had him almost as an honorable mention to be drafted on Draft Room. Mm-hmm. Mark, I'm curious as to why you wanted to discuss Trayce Jackson-Davis so badly.
Yeah, so he's interesting to me. Obviously, he's not somebody who I think is going to be a first-round guy. Like, I'll just put that out there right away. Big year for him, just because obviously I think a lot of times people look at guys with high production and like, oh, must be draftable. Trayce is somebody I look at who is very draftable, but it just depends on how things go this year. He's incredibly skilled as a finisher. Like, honestly, he's kind of shaped like a power forward from the 90s in a lot of ways, like his dad. Like, obviously not the same. I don't think he's the same level of athlete or defender, which is why he's not as highly rated as I think his dad would have been if he was coming out now. But like, in terms of what he has as a post scorer and his touch inside the arc, or just, I should say, inside the paint, he's not really much outside the paint. But like, I think I look at him as somebody who could be a really interesting bench big moving forward. Like, so often we get caught up in guys who are, like Patrick Baldwin or Caleb Houstan, or trying to find who could be, quote unquote, like the best guy in the draft. But I think in terms of looking at somebody like Trayce, he's kind of like very different player, but in some way, like similar idea to like a guy like Montrezl Harrell, who could absolutely just demolish bench units because he has such skill with what he does as a scorer. But again, a lot of it comes down to, is he athletic enough? And is he going to be versatile enough on defense? Because like you mentioned, he's 6'9", and I do think in some ways I might be generous. Like, I think he might be more closer to 6'8". I'm interested to see how he actually measures out. But he does have ability as a shot blocker, but he's got a very slow second jump. So he really has to load up to get up there. So it's all about positioning for him. And he's normally played in drop when he's been at Indiana. But now with Mike Woodson there, I'm really intrigued because they're doing a lot more in hedge and recover with him, and it's looked solid. Like, there have been rough spots for sure, but he's just looked capable of hanging in that. And I think we've seen, especially with this year in the NBA, there's a lot more coverage versatility in defense, especially because now you're allowed to play defense to a higher degree with the physicality.
Absolutely.
So I think I've just been really encouraged by that. And it'll, a lot's going to swing on what he looks like defensively in Big Ten play, because he'll be playing against much better competition. But I mean, especially in that game against Northern Illinois, I was really encouraged by some of the stuff he was doing, playing close to the level of the screen. And so I think a lot of it's going to be, he could be, if things really hit, maybe he ends up being a mid-second round, early second guy by the end of the year, because he does have enough ability that you can see it. I'm curious what you guys think, though. I know I tend to be a little bit on a different train with most people on Trayce Jackson-Davis, but he's definitely somebody who I've kept my eye on for a while, and I'm just interested to see how he adapts his game more.
So I dug into the film the past 2-3 days, and I actually posted a short little video up on the Twitter about him, and I see second round potential in him as well, Chris. When I'm looking at him, a lot of the things that Mark touched on caught my eye too, but here's some of the things that caught my eye even more, Mark, was that kind of in that short corner, he's getting a lot of attention. A lot of defenses are like, okay, he's going to take us off the dribble. He may make 2 dribbles and hit us with a post move and score on us. So let's get him to force the ball out early. Maybe he's not that good of a decision maker. Au contraire, he's getting doubled and he's finding the open man more times than not. Like, sure, everyone in a double team isn't going to make every play perfectly, but by and large, for the most part, I was looking at Trayce and I was like, okay, there might be a little bit of, DHO capability in him if they so choose to run that system in Indiana with Coach Woodson, as you mentioned. But I thought the passing was there. That defense is there. I mean, he's super strong. He's a little bit on that smaller size. I like the fact that you compared him to a Montrezl Harrell, because shorter, capable defender, super high energy player. I think that Trez obviously plays with a little bit more higher motor than him, but
Yeah.
Trayce obviously isn't afraid of anybody right now. I mean, he's the shortest center on the court most nights, but he plays much bigger than almost everybody out there. Like, boxes out well, rebounds well. Like I said, he can pass out of the, and obviously though, Chris, the reason that this guy is an All-American preseason is because he's a really good low post scorer, and there's value in that. And I think too, Mark, he also flashed a little bit of a mid-range game in the couple games that I saw. His shot doesn't look terrible. I don't know why it's not falling. Maybe you can kind of answer that question, but it's not, by far, not the worst shot that I've ever seen a big man have. But Chris, have you had a chance much to look at Trayce Jackson-Davis, and what are your thoughts?
I mean, if he was like 10 years ago, he might have been like a top 10 pick, because like in the post, Steven, you know how I am with posts. I love, that's how I play. I love backing people down in the post and just playing that old school type of bully ball. That's what I love about him, right? And obviously the way the game of basketball has changed, it's kind of devalued it, and that's why maybe people are kind of low on him, in that second round range. But I love his size. I love his size. I love his ability in the post, what he could do to create out of the post, passing and all that. Maybe his defense has looked solid. So maybe, there's some lackadaisical moments with him where he's not maybe showing that motor. Like, if he does get that, if he's Montrezl Harrell, if he gets that Montrezl Harrell motor, like, he's going to be, he should be a first round pick, because if you get that intensity, if he adds that intensity, that's a great prospect right there, but there's a lot to like about him. Want to see what he can do. The shot looks good. Needs to see more consistency from his outside shooting, but there's a lot to like about him. Very athletic and all that. Like I said, I love the post. That's what makes me like him a lot, is everything he does in the post. Footwork's good and all that. Has a bunch of moves in the post. It's not just straightforward. So and what he could do out of post, playmaking and all that. So there's a lot to like about him, and like I said, another guy I'm looking forward to seeing, progress and see if he can, expand his game, with the outside shooting.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you're looking at the box score from the previous couple games against Eastern Michigan. Didn't attempt a 3, and it was 3 of 7 from the line. But the next game against Northern Illinois that you touched on earlier, Mark, he missed a 3, but was 7 of 11 from the line. So, like, showing a little bit of some touch. And like I pointed to earlier, I'm really curious to see what your assessment on his shot is, like, why it's not falling. Because, or if you think I'm wrong at all, because again, I look at his jump shot and I don't think that it's anything, disastrous. I don't know why it's not falling, but it doesn't look terrible in my opinion. Mark, do you think that shot could ever really come around, or is he just kind of is what he is?
So I think that's kind of the question with him. I was just going through old scouting reports today, and there was a lot of thought that he could be a first round draft guy, which I don't know if I would have agreed with that at the time. But like looking at him, part of what's been difficult is, as good as he is, he really has not adapted his game a ton to being a more modern player, which is like awesome for college. But in terms of what he's going to be in the NBA, like, I mean, there are moments in both games and just all of last year where he's, consistently out there calling for the ball in the low post. And I get that that's what functions in Indiana's offense, but also like, okay, he's not a great screener right now. And like, that's something that he would really have to work on and be better at. And that's something I hope that we see from him. Like Chris mentioned, like, can he be a DHO guy? I don't know, because Indiana hasn't really run that for him. I hope it is, but it's like part of it is, you try and envision, like, can this guy, really ratchet some of those skills up at the next level? But that's what makes him more of a flyer to me than anything else right now. Because like, even again, like the motor, like I won't say that he's necessarily taking plays off. Like he is, it's tough because like he is kind of like a more lumbering guy. Like he's not the quickest, but there are definitely plays when he's in the half court where he's kind of just going through the motions instead of like, okay, dude, like nail somebody with the screen. Like if you're going to really get your guard separation, you have to screen better, like stuff like that. And especially when you're a role player, or somebody who's, like 7th or 8th man off the bench, you got to see more of that. So it's stuff to keep tabs on for this year. Again, like they haven't played against awesome competition yet. So that definitely, it changes your mind up a little bit, but there's been encouraging things, and there's stuff too, like, yeah, you want to see him work on it. And with the jumper, I just like throughout his career, he's just never taken many, like even mid-rangers. He doesn't take a lot. And I think that's part of the thing where it's like, dude, just take it. Like, we want to see it. I don't love his jumper. Like, I think it's fine. I do think the free throws could be better if they're ironed out more, because it's a little clunky, but it just depends. I was just encouraged that he took that 3. That was the first 3 of his career in college. So like, please just take them and see what happens, because why not,
You almost wonder if it's because now he's getting literally NBA level head coaching now with Coach Woodson, and saying like, hey man, you're awesome, but if you want to make it to the next step, I know I've been there, I've coached it. These are some of the things you have to work on. And you kind of can't help but wonder, Mark, if that with Coach Woodson there, that you're going to slowly see the, modernization of his game. Not saying totally retooled or revamped or anything like that, but maybe a couple little tricks of the trade here or there that he's going to implement throughout the season. But Mark, we're going to bounce now from Trayce Jackson-Davis to Andre Curbelo. We're going to State over in Illinois, and a player that had to miss, opening game due to concussion protocols. And I'm really interested to hear your take on him, because I look at him and Mark, I'm just like, man, the cojones on this kid to make some of the passes that he does. And, sometimes I don't even know if his teammates are ready for some of these passes, because they get there, they hit him, but he just, his assist total should be so much more higher than what they are right now, because he's delivering some ace passes, man, and they're hitting his guys in the pocket, and they either can't handle it because they're not expecting it, or they just don't hit the shot at all. But I love his pick and roll ability. I mean, obviously, I think that's going to be the biggest calling card for him. He's a shorter point guard, so that's not really going to help his stock at all. But Mark, you see any draft value in Andre Curbelo here?
Definitely. I look at him like, I think he's a borderline first round guy. It just depends how his offense comes along as a scorer. I know the numbers do not look great, but I've been pretty encouraged that he's just taking some of these shots. Like he's willingly taking multiple 3s per game, which I love, because he didn't do that last year. Part of it's tough because obviously, Iowa was there. They had just a really stacked team last year, and they still do this year. Kofi's not even back yet. He will be back next game. But I just look at him as somebody who, like you mentioned, like the best way to describe him is that he's playing like a step or two ahead of the entire team right now. Like there was a play yesterday that I clipped this morning where like Coleman Hawkins, who we're going to talk about later, like he hasn't been awesome defensively this year, to be honest, but like he went to, he was the low man on a play, and Curbelo was, in the far corner, and he sees Coleman's guy coming, and he's like, dude, you're not moving fast enough, starts communicating with him. And then he's like, all right, you're not taking it. So he just runs over and throws up a rim contest, forces a pass out, like stuff like that. Like he's making passes that his teammates just don't see right now. And I think they'll get more acclimated to that as time goes on. But that's why I was intrigued by him last year. Like I think he would have been, I mean, he's already just one of the better ball handlers and passers in the country and would be like that level in the NBA to a degree. But it's just going to be, can he be a good enough individual scorer? I was really, really intrigued by last game from him. And I think against Marquette, obviously they lost in pretty tough fashion. But like you look at how many shots he takes, you need to see that aggression from him because I want to see him rep things out. There isn't really a half court scorer on that team who I think you can look at and say should be getting those reps. Like maybe Kofi. Like I think Kofi will be good for developing his pick and roll game. Because even just watching the last two games, you can see he doesn't have. There's not really anybody with roll gravity on that team that's taking anything away for him. Like there are multiple layup attempts yesterday where there's not really a kick out pass for Andre.
Yep.
But there's also three guys at the rim who are trying to contest the shot. And I mean, for the most part, I liked a lot of his process until like the last 5 or 6 minutes when it became a couple of pull-up jumpers, which he's not really that guy yet. I want him to be, and I like that he's taking the shots, but I felt a lot better about his game yesterday than I think, again, than what the box score would indicate.
Yeah, and again, Chris, the box score isn't friendly to him. 4 of 8 from the floor, 11 points, didn't hit a single three-pointer, 3 of 4 from the line, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, a steal, 7 turnovers, and 4 fouls. So you look at those numbers, and it's like, why is Mark so high on this guy? But then you go to the film, and again, Chris, like you love your New York point guards here. This dude definitely has that New York vibe, that swag about him, the cojones, as I referred to earlier. He plays. I don't think he realized how little he is out there on the court. But Chris, what do you think about Andre here?
Yeah, he's definitely got some cojones grande. He plays. he don't play like he's 6'1". He plays like he's 6'6" and all that. Like it's that New York, Puerto Rican mindset, and that's probably why I'm kind of biased because I'm from New York and Puerto Rican, so maybe I'm biased towards them. And like, I know people crapped on him yesterday, with his last performance because they just see the turnovers and he was a little bit sloppy, but some of the passes he makes is like, oh my God, like he's making passes that are just zoom, like, and it is that New York style of basketball that maybe people aren't accustomed to, but there's a lot to like about him. Once he figures out the offense and all that, I think he's someone that is going to definitely climb up. I know he's kind of wide range too, as far as because you've seen people have to give him end of the first round, and then there's people who don't even have him on their board. He's kind of one of those few guys that have such a wide range, and obviously it's still early, so we're still trying to figure out things. But I think he's gonna, the last game is you saw a lot of good, a lot of bad. I think we're gonna see more good once we get, Kofi's gonna come back. I think that'll help out tremendous when he comes back and all that. So I think he'll be all right. I know people, we were freaking out. They see the stat line, and they're like, "Oh my God, what the turnovers? He played bad." Like it happens. He didn't have the best game. I think he was just trying to do too much, and he just has to play his game. He plays his game, he's going to be all right. So I'm not too worried about that. I think he'll be all right. He's going to bounce back. But yeah, there's people freaking out of, this is garbage. No, that's like, nah, relax. Let's relax. You're allowed to have a bad game. Apparently, you're not allowed to have bad games. In sports, you're not allowed to have any bad games, or else you're a scrub. So it's all right. He'll be all right. There was some good things to see, but obviously, working on the efficiency and all that. But he'll be all right.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about that Marquette game, but against Arkansas State, the Red Wolves here. 8 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and only 2 turnovers. And it looked really well. And you might say, well, okay, like the level of competition is higher. That was game 1. Marquette was game 2. He's a game behind everybody else here on this roster, Mark, because of, I pointed to earlier, concussion protocols. Now, you mentioned that you still think he's a late first round prospect. What are some of the areas that you look at and say this is why he's a first round prospect, but what are some of the things that also that you think are going to hold him back? Is it specifically his size, the defensive abilities? You know, what are some of the things that you think are kind of holding his value back compared to his offense?
So things that hold him back for sure are shooting. Like, I mean,
Mhm.
that's definitely a big part. I think anybody will look at it and be like, okay, if you're a point guard in the NBA or just a lead ball handler, you have to be able to take shots out of pick and rolls, or you have to be able to take shots off relocation. Um, I think that's something that has to happen. Like, he really hasn't improved his shot a ton. Like, again, the willingness, that's a good thing. I want to see more
Mhm.
of it. But he wasn't a good shooter in high school or in AAU. So is that going to come along? It needs to, for sure. Um, but I also think, like, again, just seeing the willingness is a good thing. The defense, I'm actually not worried about. Like, yeah, he's small, but I also think, especially if you're just looking at the regular season, you can get away with it. And he's a really good, like, especially given his size, like, maybe impact wise, not awesome, but defensively, I think he's good. Like, you even see, like, he'll rotate as the low man and box out a center. Like, it's stuff where it's not great when you're 6'1", like 170, and you have to do that, but like, he does it effectively, man. Like, he makes good rotations off the ball. He's decent. He's not like an awesome nail defender. Like, he doesn't always leave his defender to go make a play, which I don't hate. But he's impactful in passing lanes. He's got quick hands. Even if he does get beat, he's good at trying to muck things up. So he definitely has limitations, but also I don't think it's anything drastic as a defender. And I also just love his rebounding. Like, I
Mhm.
love guards who can rebound, and it's not just fake rebounds. Like, he will
Yeah.
go in and get a board. It's not just, getting stuff off of a box out from somebody else.
It's not schemed for him to be the
Yes,
rebounder.
yeah,
Yeah.
Well, he's getting
exactly.
in there too. I mean, I think he's averaging more rebounds than he is assists right
Yeah,
now.
he's averaging 6 boards
He's
per game
getting
right
in
now,
there.
which is
Like,
second on the team. So he's
yeah,
like, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He plays bigger. Like he's that's why New York City, like, point guards, like, they just like to get physical in there. Like, he don't care he's 6'1", he gonna get in there. He's boxing out
exactly.
big 6'10" dudes and all that to get it. Like, that's what I love about his physicality. That's why I'm not worried about a lot of the other things that people were just pointing out with
Mhm.
with his game. But he's a lot of fun to watch too.
But yeah, just to go back to it too, like, I think in terms of why I would be high on him, I mean, there are very few players in this draft who have that level of handle and passing and just see the floor like he does.
Mhm.
So I just think, for me, like, I value that incredibly high. Like, I think Sharif Cooper should have been a lottery pick. I think he should
Amen,
be
dude.
getting,
I
playing
was
time in the
all on
NBA
the
right now.
Sharif
I
should
view
have been
him
lottery.
like,
Yep, agree.
he's obviously not nearly in the same category as a scorer, but I think in terms of passing vision and the way that he sees things in his handle, like, I think he's close to that. So I do think, like, that's somebody that I'd be willing to take. Like, even if he only ends up being like a good backup, like, the league needs better backup point guards.
Mhm.
I just think the way that we've seen things trend, like, basketball is played for 48 minutes. You may as well have somebody good out there for the entire time. So I definitely would be all in on him as a first round guy, but understand why people wouldn't.
Yeah, 100% agree. And again, looking at the film, he popped a lot more than I was expecting him to. And pointing to that size and competitiveness, there's times where they're in a 2-3 formation, and he being a 6'1" guard, you see him kind of in that bottom three, which traditionally you would see a guy his size probably play up at the top. So very interesting the way that he plays. He plays a lot bigger than what he is. Love his game. If you're listening to us here on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio, thank you all so much for tuning in. We're joined here by Mark Schindler, of Tag the Roll, of Premium Hoops, and also Indy Cornrows. So also, if you're listening, this episode is probably going to run a little bit long for the radio segment, but we have one more player that we're going to discuss here, that being Coleman Hawkins. So if you want to listen to the rest of that, just go anywhere podcasts are available and look up Draft Capital, and you'll be able to catch up with the rest of the show. So, Mark, you wanted to discuss Coleman Hawkins, and we saw him without basically the top part of the rest of the supporting cast, or he would basically be the supporting cast if they were all playing. But essentially, a lot of the starters missed in that first game, put into a role where he had to create. We saw him bring the ball up a lot, and then obviously when we see Andre coming back, relinquishes that role a little bit, but still does a lot of kind of secondary, tertiary shot creation and playmaking for this team. He's 6'10", a little over 215. Fancies himself as a shooter, and a little bit of a shot blocker as well. So, Mark, you wanted to talk about Coleman Hawkins, a guy that really nobody else is talking about. Go ahead and tell us why he's standing out to you so far this season.
Yeah, he was somebody who I wished would get more playing time last year. He spent most of his time on the bench. Part of it was just like one of the hangups for him automatically is going to be he's not the most athletic dude, which hurts. But I also think like he has size, so I don't care as much. And he looks a lot better this year. He looks like he belongs on court a lot more than when he got minutes last year. So that's a plus. I do believe in him as a shooter. I know that he's shooting not terribly well right now, but the shot looks solid to me. He's getting the line a bunch. He just looks like he plays a lot bigger than 215. He plays very physically. I like that. And mainly for me, it's just the skill. Like he is very skilled for a player his size. He can handle, he can face up. He actually makes some really nice passes. Like especially in the game against Jackson State, he was essentially playing as the lead point guard for the Illini, and I was pretty like impressed. I didn't think it was anything mind blowing, but also just considering, all right, this guy's 6'10", he's really showing off a lot. I like it. I want to see more. Defensively, he has a long ways to go, though. Like, I don't think like a lot of his blocks and steals are just from him being long as shit and bigger than his competition. Like he definitely needs to improve his timing as a shot blocker. But I think it's there. Like you see the foundation there. And the thing with him is like he's a guy who, especially coming out of high school, I think it was more of a wing. So like it shows on court. Like he looks like a wing who's learning how to play a new position and be more of a big, more of a four. But I've just been so encouraged by like, I mean, again, like you just don't see most guys like so much of like what's changed now and looking at the way that things used to be. In talking about draft prospects and just guys in general, like everybody wanted a stretch four who could protect the rim. And I think that's still the thing, but it's more like, okay, you need a four who can actually do something with the ball in their hands. Like it can't just be shooting. Like even we saw this with John Collins in the playoffs. He really struggled with making decisions because eventually the Bucks just said, okay, John Collins, shoot. We're going to close out. If you shoot, or no, if you're on the 3-point line, you get the ball. We're going to close out really hard and make you make a decision. And he struggled with that. His handle wasn't tight enough. He wasn't great as a short roll playmaker. Also credit to him because he's good at both those things now. Like he's really worked on that. But like I look at a guy at Coleman Hawkins who is going to shoot. He's a willing shooter. I think he's going to be a good shooter. But he can attack off the bounce and he can make reads and he can make plays. It's just not easy to find guys who are going to be at least average or neutral with that size. On defense and also make plays on the offensive end without being negative. So I look at him as somebody who I think is going to ratchet up draft boards if he keeps this kind of play up for sure.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And Chris, I was talking to you a little bit before the show where I think he's at least like worst case scenario. I think he's just at least going to get a look from a team, you know, if he's not drafting to get signed to a team for a lot of the reasons that Mark just pointed out because of his size, you know, the shot does look pretty, Mark. I like his form a lot. Just, you know, not everybody shoots, you know, 70% from deep, you know, the first week of college hoops, right? Sometimes the shot takes a little bit to start falling, but that playmaking is there. The shot blocking, like you pointed to, is solely due to his length. It's not because he has tremendous footwork or anything like that, but he does show a little bit of instincts to be able to stick his arm up there and throw a shot back. So we see that. In the passing. So Chris, looking at a guy like Coleman Hawkins, Mark, real quick, I'll just throw this to you. I could not shake like this. I'm not saying he's going to have the same success as the guy, but I saw so much like Ryan Anderson in his game. I don't know how much you see of that in him, if you see any of it at all, but like that's kind of the comp that I saw. Do you get any credit to that or no?
That's interesting. I don't know if I would go Ryan Anderson. Like I do think you could like say like maybe early Ryan Anderson. I don't think he's gonna be that level of shooter because like I don't know if I see Coleman as being a guy who's taking stuff out of movement anytime soon. Because Ryan was like, I mean, especially like he got to a stage where everything was so tough for him as a shooter, and he was still shooting like 40% on 9 a game. Yeah. But in terms of like a guy who can put the ball on the floor, like, I think he's got potential to be a better defender than Ryan because Ryan was like so ground bound as an athlete.
Yep.
But I don't think that's crazy.
Okay, fair enough. Chris, give it to you. Coleman Hawkins. What are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about him. Like that, you know, the improvement he's already made from freshman to sophomore year is night and day. And like Mark said, like the playmaking, the ball handling, the shooting potential, scoring potential, those are things that, from a 6'10" dude, you're like, wow, he's really impressive. I would think things he need to work on defensively, but the point forward skills, his passing is solid. Like like in the notes, you said, not listed on any draft boards, essentially. He's not listed. It's going to change. It's going to change. Even if what we've seen early in the season, like there's a lot to like about him, like as a stretch type of big, with the shooting potential and all that. There's a lot to like about him with his passing and everything. So he's definitely going to rise up boards pretty quick because there's a lot of things that are very intriguing about his game. And, I'm interested to see how he'll be with when Kofi comes back, because I know his minutes have ticked up because of no Kofi. So I'm there's a lot to like about it. Like, it's another guy that I'm really looking forward to see how he progresses, once especially when to get to Big Ten play and all that. So very intriguing prospect. He's definitely going to rise up for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, that's the full gambit, man. And, as always, we appreciate all of our guests. And this is the first time that we've got a chance to work together, and very glad that you took the time to be able to come on Draft Capital here today. Hope we got to get you on again, man. You're one of the brightest in the biz right now, brother. And I appreciate you being on. Some of the listeners, some of the followers of Draft Capital may not be familiar, and just please enlighten them where they can find you and your work, brother.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. This was a blast. I'd love to come back on sometime. You can find me on Twitter at mschindlernba. It's MSCHINDLERNBA. I put all my work up there. I'm pretty active, so you can find me there.
Absolutely. And again, I read some of your articles that were on Premium Hoops just to kind of get a feel for your writing style, and the Indy Cornrows, some of the post-game analysis and stuff like that you do, man. It's good work, and I'm going to be keeping up with you. And, it may be a little bit before we get to do any work together, but, we won't be strangers on the Twitterverse here. But Chris, Mark felt like he stepped in and did a great job, man. Better than what I expected, first time chopping it up. Sometimes you kind of have to dance around people, get a feel for them. Mark feels like a regular already. What did you think about the episode, boss?
Oh, he hit a grand slam.
Of course.
He hit a grand slam. When I took the curveball, boom, went deep with it. He killed it. Mark, appreciate you coming on, man. I've been a fan of your work for a while, so this was really cool to have you on and finally get to chop it up with you, brother. So appreciate you coming on the show, man.
No problem. And be sure to go and absolutely. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there, Mark. Good. But please go look up Tag the Roll. It's a great. I listen to every time y'all drop a podcast, man. When I'm on my way into work, I listen to it. You guys do such a great job there. But as for Chris, as for myself, for our special guest Mark, this has been Draft Capital, brought to you by Off the Ball Network and Built Bar. We will catch up with you guys next time. Much love, everybody.